So we have a panel here to discuss the area that we are covering in this session, which is how can we do things smarter and better. And I'm going to introduce them one by one. And I'm starting with Miguel Marquez, who's a partner at PwC Portugal. Portugal, of course, a great maritime nation. And he has advised multinational clients from the ports, shipbuilding, aquaculture, energy, maritime transportation, and biotechnology sectors. So, Miguel, tell us how we can do things smarter and better.
I'd like to start by thanking you for this invitation, and I would like to say that I'm very happy here today, not only because I enjoy coming to Ireland, but I was here in 2014 as a keynote speaker for the first conference, and since then I noticed that there is progress on the economy of the Sea of Ireland. The data that was available at the time, it was for 2010, and the weight of your GDP on the economy of the sea was 0.7. Today, your minister said that is 0.9, so it is a huge progress in five years. I'm also happy because at the time in 2014 I was the only PwC guy in the room, and now we are main sponsors of this, so PwC is and will invest a lot on develop of the economy of the Sea of Ireland. And why is that? Because we think there is a huge opportunity. If you compare, I lead this project all over the world, and the global figure says that 2.5 is the average weight of GDP of the economy of the sea in the world. So you are 0.9, so that there is a gap to fulfill. So we foresee that you will be in Europe one of the countries that more fast will grow for two reasons. Because you will catch up to this average, and also OECD says that by 2050, the economy of the sea in the world will be the double. So if you surf well this wave, you will progress. We can comment why there is this gap. So I'm not an historian, so I know a little bit about your history. I think it has to do with history. And I would like to quote a very good writer from Portugal, which is Brandão, and he says that land and farming forces you to look down. The sea commands you to look up. So maybe in some centuries in the past there was an unbalanced relation in between land and the sea. And land is important, but if it has the monopoly of your attention, you will look less up. So, and I would like to congratulate Peter and all the team for these consistent events, because they are dealing with managing this gap and fulfill this gap. So, but question was very direct, how can we do better? First thing I recommend to you is never swim against the current. So you must understand what are the global trends. And I have a map here, I will explain rapidly, but I would like to point out 5 megatrends, which is the rapid urbanization, the climate change and resource scarcity that we very well explained, shift in global economic power, and in this one there is embedded a huge challenge for you. And the demographic and social change, and also the technological breakthrough. So in a fast journey all around these 5 currents that you should never swim against it, but you should swim in favor of the current, and when is the right moment, you should change direction to grab the opportunity. So rapid urbanization, you have the 2 main urban centers in Ireland are Dublin area and Cork area that has more than 50% of the Irish people that are in Ireland. So you must grab their attention in terms of human capital and financing. So it is the money that are in these cities and the other cities on the coastlines that must finance this investment, and also the people. And when we look to the Brandão words, how many of the urban people of Ireland think in the sea, and how do they think on this subject? If you work on their minds, probably you will find the human capital needed and also the financing, not only to use in the urban areas, but to use in all other areas that can be a lake, a river, or a coast, or even the high seas. If you jump to climate change, you can find that you are top 10 in renewable energy. It's the only dot that Ireland has in that economy of the sea map. When we rank activities in the world from the best country to the 30 best country, the only dot you get on Ireland is in the renewable energy. So if you have the goal to maintain this position, it would be a very good goal for the future. If you jump to demographic and social change, I will not spend much more than endorse what you said, because we must find a solution for people to eat, and the sea as an answer to that. So we believe that seafood will increase a lot in terms of value, and you can explore that. You are doing that, but you can do more. The last opportunity is the technological breakthrough that will allow us to live in the sea progressively. So, and you are very good on IT and also biotechnology, so we think you'll do well in that area.
Right.
To close the challenge,
yeah.
so if you see on that map, we live in an unbalanced world where Asia in 10 years did one thing that no other country in history was able to do, was to catch the leadership of many things, and the sea is one of that. China is first one in aquaculture with more than 60% of world production, first one in fishing, first one in shipbuilding, first one in transport and port, container ports, and it's in top 3 of defense. If you look, all Asia controls seafood in terms of big numbers. What remains to the Atlantic and the West is the pleasure. We are very good on tourism, but this is not sustainable, only be good on tourism. And we also extract oil and gas, and we are betting a lot on renewable energies. Also, there is an issue that we are in 21st century, but there is a piracy belt in between, all along latitude Ecuador, that impairs a lot of activities on the south, like tourism, for instance. So this is your main challenge, how to live in an unstable world. And instability demands flexibility. And flexibility is possible to find not only in activities like tourism or seafood, but also in heavy industries like shipbuilding or even ports that you cannot relocate. But when you deal with the time of the contracts, the flexibility you have to use the port, you can also be flexible.
Okay, thank you, and we'll come back to some of those points. But I want to turn now to Mike Hall, and Mike is the head of marketing at the UK-based Cruise and Maritime Voyages company. So, Mike, tell us, in terms of getting more of your business, how can we do things smarter and better?
Thank you, Olivia. Well, in conference terms, I believe this is known as the graveyard slot, the session following lunch. No wonder it's entitled Smarter and Better We Need to Be. Smarter was easy, just put on your best suit. Better, well, as a marketeer, that's what I do. Convince people that our product is better. Cruise and Maritime Voyages, CMV, is Britain's leading independent cruise line. With a fleet of 5 small to mid-sized ships, we specialise in no-fly, scenic cruising holidays from 16 ports in the UK and Ireland. 2017 is our 8th year of operation, during which time our annual passenger carryings have grown from 0 to a projected 100,000 for 2018. Almost 2 million people took a cruise from the UK or Ireland last year, and that is set to rise. 48% of these are no-fly cruises from a home port, and that can be attributed to the convenience of travelling to a regional departure port with relatively no hassles compared with flying. In fact, 1 in 9 package holidays booked today is now a cruise. So how does this affect Ireland? First of all, I'll deal with the Irish source market. This year, we at CMV introduced a programme of cruises departing from Dublin, serving the Irish market. These are twinned turnaround calls, with half of the ship's guests joining in Dublin and the remainder in Liverpool. These have been a resounding success for us, and so for next year, 2018, we have increased this programme by 50% and introduced departures from Cove, twinned with Bristol, in addition to Dublin. A choice of 11 cruising holidays are on offer between July and October to Iceland, Norway, the Canary Islands, Spain and Portugal, the British Isles, Baltic cities and Russia, European cities, and of course the Med. Introducing Cove in addition to Dublin opens up another regional market and offers greater consumer choice and convenience. All of this brings huge economic benefit to these ports and services supporting them. The total passenger capacity will be approximately 3,000. That's 3,000 people travelling to and through Dublin and Cove using transport, hotels and port facilities. But how can Ireland develop its cruise business in an international marketplace competing alongside worldwide ports? For 2017, Ireland has less than 200 cruise calls at all of its ports. Compare this with a country like Norway, with 1,887 total calls. Ireland's scenic beauty, historic treasures and cultural links with so many countries around the world make it extremely attractive. However, the country is limited for cruise ships through a lack of port infrastructure. Open this up and Ireland could be welcoming many more thousands of cruise visitors each year. These visitors will spend money on tours, in shops, services, and facilities, bringing much additional income and having a real economic impact. Cruising is very much a first impressions visit. Having sampled the hospitality and delights of Ireland, 4 out of every 5 cruise passengers say that they will return for a much longer based holiday. And so tourism develops and the economic benefits are truly manifested. Cruise holidays are destination-led, and cruise lines perform an incredible job in promoting the destination, its sights and experiences, whether people choose to cruise there or not. For this reason, cruise lines need support and encouragement to develop their business and marketing. Remember, Dublin isn't competing with Belfast for cruise calls. This is a highly competitive international arena where Ireland's ports compete alongside Copenhagen, Barcelona and Lisbon. For this reason, Ireland needs to become smarter and better.
Thank you, Mike. And now I'm moving along to Greg Murphy. Greg is the Executive Director of the Maritime Alliance, a San Diego not-for-profit organization whose mission is promoting sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries. So, Greg, how we can do things smarter and better.
Great. Thank you, Olivia, and thank you to the Maritime Development team here in Ireland for the opportunity to present and to learn more about what Ireland is doing. In San Diego, through the Maritime Alliance, we're quite familiar with what Ireland is doing and actually quite impressed with the national maritime strategy that the country's put forward, and actually quite envious because we believe that it's on the right track. So pleased to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to the Marine Institute, the Maritime Development team, and others for making this summit happen. In terms of answering the question, smarter and better, you actually have to ask the question of why. And to us, as the mission, as Olivia stated, our mission is promoting sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries. The answer is very clear, which is the ocean is going to be critically important for all of society over the next 5, 10, 30 years. And so how do we do that? How do we find those solutions? How do we create the incentives to do it smarter and better? And to us, it's really through the role of clusters. So the Maritime Alliance, we represent the San Diego Ocean and Water Technology Cluster. And we're quite unusual. We're not unique because I know that Ireland, and speaking with Liam Curran here, Ireland also brings together ocean and water technologies. But between Ireland and those of us in San Diego, we're quite unusual in that we do that. And we do that for a number of reasons. I won't go into great detail. But if you look at the Earth's water system, it's integrated. So why isn't industry also integrated? So we find great value in that. But in terms of smarter and better and the role of clusters, this was a topic of the discussion at the United Nations also earlier this month, was the role of clusters. And we are the organizers of the San Diego cluster, but we work and collaborate with other clusters around the world to find technologies to bring the triple helix together in terms of academia, industry, and government, as well as civil society, to make sure that everybody benefits from a growing blue economy, a growing ocean economy. You have to do it by bringing all the stakeholders together. That's part of the reason why I'm here today, is to better understand and meet some of the cool technologies that are here and potentially bring those to San Diego and vice versa. And we're doing that across multiple clusters. In January, earlier this year, we helped launch the Blue Tech Cluster Alliance. It's 8 leading clusters from 7 countries, including Canada, France, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, the UK, and the US. And I was pleased to meet Miguel from Portugal last night. And Forum Oceano is the cluster for the country of Portugal. And we're doing all sorts of things together. We're linking our incubators together. We're in early stage conversations about doing an investment fund for the blue economy. We're gathering data to understand the economic situation, country by country, region by region, but also, as the OECD report identified globally, going from $1.5 trillion in 2010 to $3 trillion by 2030. And I'll just end by mentioning that the ocean economy is not only important, it's a huge opportunity. We compare it with the global water economy. It's about $500 to $600 billion, depending on which report you read. If you look at the global space economy, it's about $320 to $350 billion. But as the OECD identified, the ocean economy is $1.5 trillion. So it is significantly larger, and yet it's not getting enough attention. And to us, clusters are a way to raise the profile, to coordinate activities, to find technologies, and to promote that sort of sustainability that I think we're all looking for. So with that, I'll stop there.
Okay, Greg, thank you. And something we talk about later is that in moving to smarter, cleaner, more sustainable industries, the need not to leave traditional workers in the traditional industries behind. But Dan, if I can now move to you, and of course, Dan is the chief economist at the Institute of International and European Affairs, and he's previously examined the Irish food sector. Dan, we're talking about potential chances, opportunities out there. Is that how you see it? Is the glass half full or half empty?
Thanks, Olivia. Octopus. I'd eat this stuff till tentacles come out my ears. But I was in my 20s, after I'd emigrated before the first time I ever even tasted it. It's always struck me that for an island nation, I can't think of anywhere that has such a limited tradition of seafood consumption. And the broader point of that is that I think we're a nation of people that have historically not taken advantage of things. We're not nearly as good entrepreneurs as we often like to think we are. And I think when you're looking at smarter and better, you need to be honest about things, see where the problems are, and until you start addressing those problems and accepting them, you're not going to improve as much as you can. And I think there is an absolutely enormous potential for an island nation like ours to exploit its ocean resources. And I'll just give a couple of figures towards the end. But just to reinforce that point, 1,000 years ago, the Vikings were building boats and they were coming down here and plundering us. We weren't even able to repel them. Our maritime technology was not to the point where we could even repel them, never mind go up there and plunder them. 500 years ago, Miguel's ancestors were building boats that were bringing them around the world. Portugal was the first country to have an ocean, a saltwater empire, what historians call it, an empire that was beyond their immediate geographic area. Anywhere you go in the world, so many places in the world, the Spice Islands, Japan, Malacca, the Portuguese, you see the remnants of Portugal's maritime capacity. And that's kind of true of pretty much all of the western seaboard of Europe. And we just weren't there. So this is a long-term thing that we just have been way behind the curve in terms of taking advantage of those things. I think the most the most obvious comparator country for us is the other small island nation in Northwest Europe, Iceland. Let's just do two comparisons. One person out of every 66 people in this economy is employed in the wider ocean economy. It's 1 in 20 in Iceland. That's a much bigger amount. If we look at GDP, again, it was referred to earlier, less than 1% of our GDP, and we know our GDP is messed up, but less than 1% of it is accounted for by the ocean economy. In Iceland, it's more than 10 times that. So there is a massive opportunity, but I think we need to be honest honest with ourselves and say that we haven't taken those opportunities in the past. We are certainly getting better, that the ocean economy is growing more rapidly than the wider economy, and that's been doing pretty well of late. But I think we need to say, why aren't there more? That guy who was the kayaker who was developing this technology, wearable technology, why aren't there more guys like that, and girls, setting up companies instead of, we still lose so many people from emigration. Why are we not having more young people setting up businesses, taking advantage of the economic opportunity, the good business environment we have, and raising our sights and saying, there really is, if we've got halfway to where Iceland is, we'd have a huge, much bigger indigenously based industry, which we need because we're too dependent on foreign companies.
So, Dan, just to continue with the why question, what's your answer? I mean, is it something to do with the fact that somewhere along the line we realized that, particularly after the famine, land, if you had land and if you owned land, you didn't starve, you didn't die. I mean, is that the reason why we have this obsession with land rather than the sea?
Yeah, look, I've written different articles about this over time, and it always gets a lot of commentary. I suppose there's no definite reason. It's historically there's a lot of different reasons why we could attribute to our low level of entrepreneurialism and the tendency to emigrate rather than stay at home and start businesses. There's cultural things, there's religion, all sorts of stuff, and I suppose we could talk about that till the cows come home. But my point about this is that rather than telling ourselves we're great entrepreneurs, which I hear much too often from official Ireland, we should say to ourselves, no, we haven't traditionally been good entrepreneurs. Let's ask ourselves why and say, what can we do more particularly to address it? Things like the education system, is it business focused enough? Is it entrepreneur focused enough? What are the blockages around starting a business? Focus more on, you don't really address a problem until you admit that it is a problem. Yeah. And I'd much prefer that we spoke about it as we haven't traditionally been good. We are getting better, there's no doubt about it, but let's accept it and let's say, let's do more to address it and get more people. Just a quick anecdote. Whenever I do something in a university, I always ask people, who's going to work in the private sector? Hands go up. Who's going to work in the public sector? Some hands go up. Who's going to emigrate? Hands go up. Who's going to start their own business? It's always the smallest group, and usually there are more people who are going to leave than start their own business. That's a bad thing.
Okay.
If I can jump in on that, sure. Dan, and I fully agree with you on the challenge on entrepreneurship, because we did about 5 years ago an examination for the food industry, where were our high potential startups going to come from? And we did a lot of discussions with Enterprise Ireland on it, and that each year, this is 5 years ago now, they would be supporting perhaps 90 high potential startups every year. And even though the food industry is the largest indigenous industry that we have, only 1 or 2 of them were coming from the food industry. So we put our hands up at that stage and said, what are we doing to our entrepreneurs? How can we get more scale into it? And what we looked at was, food entrepreneurs are different from other entrepreneurs because it's very easy to go into food at a low scale, but it's very hard to scale and be high potential in food. So we looked at the barriers, and what we found is that to be really good at food, you need 3 things. You need, number 1, something that's technologically advanced. Number 2, you need something that the consumer actually wants, because as you were mentioning earlier, she doesn't really want to know about the technology. She wants a need that's fulfilled and have a real consumer insight behind it. And then third, you need a market. So it's only when you get those 3 things together. So much of our tech entrepreneurs are coming through with a tech-only idea. Food needs consumer, market, and tech. And have created a new program called FoodWorks then, that was the agencies of Tagus, Enterprise Ireland, Borbia, all coming together to give a unique set of skills that would address an issue that we knew and we put our hands up to say we had. And now we've got an alumni of FoodWorks coming through a program that gives them pilot access to technology. It works with BIM, it works with Tagus to get that technical aspect of the food play, but then it works with ourselves in Borbia through a thinking house on how do you get the insight behind it, and then how do you get the business case, because getting investment in food is a challenge as well. So it's trying to get different solutions to challenges that, you're right, have to be called out.
Right. Can I just pick up with yourself and Miguel your theme about sustainability? I mean, to an ordinary watcher like me, it would say, right, if we're going to have all of these extra requirements to meet in terms of how we do our food business, doesn't that leave us at a disadvantage vis-a-vis perhaps companies in Asia who are not trying to be origin green and are not taking on the responsibility of being sustainable? So how do we deal with people? Do we stop taking imports from certain countries if they don't meet the sort of standards we want? How do we both protect ourselves from cheap imports, but also generally bring the quality of food up?
There are two huge influences, and that's what I was trying to capture in the presentation here. There's the law about doing the right thing. So we've all signed up to targets, and that each of our governments have signed up to targets on what they want to achieve in sustainability, and that's clearly a strong influence in some countries. But then there's also what the consumer will purchase, and the consumer is increasingly dictating her behaviour to the big brands, the big supermarkets, to say, I will source product from you, but I expect you to do the thinking for me. I expect you to have the procurement in place. And because of that, you've got a supply chain who's reacting to that, saying, if I'm Marks and Spencer's, if I'm Sainsbury's, I don't want to be on the Greenpeace bad list. I need to get my procurement in line. And they can't do that on their own. So what they're looking for now is solutions. And one of the challenges, and it might be one of the only areas I might have challenged Tom on this morning, in do things in pilot versus do things big, because you need, when you're talking about the food industry, pilot will only get you so far. You need to start doing things at scale. And when you're looking at what the Irish food industry is doing, it means now that Unilever can literally pick up the phone to Ireland and it has a solution. It doesn't have to find Johnny down in a particular factory and then have to make sure that his systems are actually as good as he said they were. Ireland Inc. has now got an accredited system that makes the supply chain easier for them.
Miguel, the danger of, if we are to be sustainable and it's costing us a lot of effort and trouble to do it, the danger that our product in the EU is going to be undercut by cheaper.
Your question is a very interesting and important question, because it goes to the deep origin of this unbalanced world, which is Asia was able to catch up and overcome the West in several industries because it has a consistent strategy that has to deal with if it's a democracy or not, but I will not enter in that arena. And also because it has less regulation, which implies less costs. And if you sell to another region with low barriers, cost less products, you will win in that arena. I think, looking forward, I think we have a fantastic opportunity this year to partnership with Asia. Because if you remember the words of the Chinese leader in Davos, challenging the US, he took the flag of the sustainability, at least in his words. So it's the momentum to face China and ask for a partnership that is based in a balanced trading. Well, any emerging country has the right to have time to catch up, but also has the obligation to really catch up. And with that, input more regulation on social welfare and also environmental. So we are in the right moment. And the little countries of Europe, like Portugal or Ireland or others, should lead that discussion, because big countries maybe don't have that interest because they export a lot to Asia.
Yeah, but I mean, the wonderful thing about Portugal, and I was very conscious of it being in Lisbon in March, is the extent to which it's so proud of its maritime history, its seafaring history, the great
our blood,
tower at Belém.
Our blood is salty blood.
It is salty
as yours.
blood. It is,
so,
yeah.
Yes, we have the advantage of linking sea as identity.
Yeah.
And you have also that opportunity.
And we should do
because
that as well.
deeply in your mind, you have the sea there. So it's
We do.
just to
We
put
do.
it on the top of the mind.
Dan, just to bring you in here, because the question, there are financial services that particularly relate to maritime issues. Insurance, perhaps, of ships, ship leasing. It is a particular area. What about the opportunities for us to have, perhaps down in the city of Cork, a financial services area that's related particularly to the marine and to maritime? Or is that a bit of a pipe dream for us?
Well, okay, so where our biggest indigenous entrepreneurial success has been aviation leasing.
Yeah.
Half of all the planes in the world are based out of, are owned by Irish companies. And this all goes back to sort of an accident that happened in the 30s with Guinness Peak Aviation, and Ireland has become a real hub for that. I was in Singapore recently, and they really want to get that business. They really view that as something. But it's been very difficult for them to get, okay? So it strikes me that once you get a cluster, you were talking about clusters, once you get a competitive advantage with clustering, where you get a bunch of people who really know the business, unless you mess it up, it can be very difficult for other people to come in and muscle into that market. You just develop a sort of an intellectual infrastructure around it. Now, given that you have countries like the Netherlands, you know, those sort of very long, historically maritime countries, I think it would be difficult to break into that sort of market, Lloyd's of London, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure in something as specialized in that. It's more in the new technology markets where I think the opportunities are, plus the tourism, plus the aquaculture. I hope we get a chance to talk about that, but they seem to be the big...
And in fact, you were making that point, Miguel, last night, that
Yes.
IT is an area.
For sure, you have the fantastic opportunity to increase in that area, linking insurance, financial services, and shipping industry. Maybe in the beginning there is the handicap of you don't have a lot of ships, or you don't have a strong shipbuilding. The best case I find in Europe is Hamburg scenario, but in Hamburg they have a strong, less strong, but strong shipbuilding industry and a shipping industry. And this is what the economy of the sea is all about, the integrated approach. We in PwC, we advise clients, so we are in their factories. So we want practical solutions. So what is an integrated approach? For us in PwC, it is finding a mutual benefit. So if you want to nurture that area, you must find the mutual benefit in between the financial system or the banking system and the insurance system and the operators. I don't know how it is your flag register, but I can imagine that it is not yet one of the biggest in Europe, and you should deal with it. So, but finding mutual benefits to all the ones you need to be bigger.
Okay, Greg, just the thing we were talking about earlier, if we're moving to a more sustainable, renewable energy, and we should all have learned this lesson after the election in America last year, how do you bring with you those workers who work in those traditional industries and who will obviously feel threatened by change rather than being included in it?
Yeah, I know it's, as seen in the United States earlier, the energy transition is a big deal, and you have to make sure that civil society workers are included in the benefits of that energy transition. Otherwise, there's going to be backlash. So, for example, in the state of California, the demand for energy is anywhere from 30 to 50 gigawatts. But there's technical capacity for offshore wind, 100% renewable, about 112 gigawatts. So that essentially can become an export for California. Now, are we going to get 112 gigawatts? I don't know. But in terms of bringing up the workforce development component, which was your question, related to making sure that students that are in the pipeline now, young workers, existing workers, have the necessary skill sets to fill those jobs, what we call the blue economy jobs of tomorrow, is absolutely critical. So in San Diego, our cluster, we have a partnership with our local school district, and we're developing a curriculum focused on the blue economy that's introducing middle school and high school students to multiple careers in the marine sector, whether it's aquaculture and fishing, cybersecurity in the maritime domain, offshore renewable energy, everything from science, technology, engineering, even the arts, and mathematics. It's critically important. And so to have that partnership and be able to do that on a local level, thinking globally but acting locally is the maxim that we strive to achieve.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to Mike in a moment about that investment that he says we have to make in our ports.